Good afternoon and welcome to the Angry Astronaut. So, as of right now, both I and thousands of other people around the world are reading the very long biography of Elon Musk written by the famed biographer Walter Isaacson, a man who's been granted access to dozens of extremely famous people, and this is no exception. He was given several years of access to Elon Musk's private life, or at least his operative life while he was at SpaceX, at Tesla, had a lot of opportunities to see this guy at both his best and his worst. And frankly, some of the excerpts from this book have really revealed an individual that is difficult to work for, to say the least. A man whose genius is matched only by his ability to terrorize people. Now, there are those who think that Walter Isaacson may be taking extreme liberties with the truth. He's just an author, he's just trying to sell books, etc., etc. But when it comes right down to it, I really think that he's being honest here and fairly accurate, because he did not address some of the most sensitive problems that Elon Musk has been facing lately. Although the issue with Ukraine is something that came to light and also proved to be true, Elon's having to deal with the backlash from all of that right now. Isaacson didn't deal with a lot of the claims being made at SpaceX and Tesla in regards to racism, in regards to sexual harassment, that sort of thing. He steered clear of a lot of the most sensitive and embarrassing things that Elon Musk probably didn't want to be dragged out into the public eye in his biography. I tend to think that all of the negative things that Mr. Isaacson talks about in his book probably happened more or less the way he describes them. And the way he describes things in his book, as far as Elon Musk's leadership is concerned, as far as his method of dealing with employees, especially employees that he's not terribly pleased with, well, they kind of paint him as the worst boss in the world. But is this true? Do we simply have to take the bad with the good here? Does genius have to be balanced with a wild personality given to outbursts of childish anger? Or is he just the worst boss in the world? Good afternoon. Once again, welcome to the Angry Astronaut. Before we go any further, I would just like to thank everyone that has supported this journey to the United Kingdom. Now that I'm here, I'm extremely happy to be here and already have set up a wide variety of opportunities with European spaceflight. Looking forward to bringing you some very exclusive and unique content. One of my upcoming events is going to be a fundraiser, or rather supporting a fundraiser for an Irish organization that is trying to reactivate a huge radio dish that can be used for radio astronomy, interplanetary communications, a wide variety of things. And I am fortunate enough to have the opportunity to work together with them to try to publicize their mission and to try to raise money for this nonprofit. Very excited about that. And that's just one of many things coming up. If you would like to support my ongoing activities here in Europe and make it possible for me to travel outside the United Kingdom, as I really want to do here in the near future, well, it's all in the description, and all of your support comes with a membership to my Discord server, gives you early access to my videos, gives you an opportunity to become part of some member exclusive events, a whole bunch of benefits, and you can find more details about that in the description. Okay, enough self-promotion. Let's get back to the topic at hand. Now, there are two things that strike me as being remarkable about this biography. First of all, its length, 670 pages. I mean, I would be hard-pressed to come up with 670 pages about myself, that's for certain, and I'm roughly Elon's age, but that just indicates how many things this man has accomplished in his life compared to what I've accomplished. But that having been said, also the access to Elon Musk is unprecedented. The 3 years or so that Isaacson was given access to Elon Musk is something that many biographers can only wish for. That being the case, though, some Elon supporters are arguing that Isaacson is taking extreme liberties with the truth, especially when it comes to some of the horror stories about the man. Once again, I think that if any errors were made in this biography, it were omissions in regards to some of the more embarrassing things about Elon Musk's life and some of the more controversial things. For example, Isaacson never really touches on the existence of apartheid in Musk's youth, even though that was a very significant thing happening in South Africa at the time. He also doesn't mention the alleged racist working conditions at Tesla's Fremont factory. Really, there are many things that Musk has been accused of that Isaacson doesn't deal with at all, which is one of the reasons that Isaacson gets such unparalleled access to such important people, because he doesn't tend to embarrass them publicly very often. So let's check out one of the more interesting excerpts from this biography in regards to stacking Starship back in July of 2021, well before Starship was ready to launch, well before Starship was going to be approved for a launch from the FAA, but nevertheless, Musk was very determined to get this done. Quote, "We need to stack the ship on the booster," Musk told the impromptu meeting of 100 workers gathered in a semicircle in one of the 3 hangar-like tents in Boca Chica. It was a brutally sunny day in July 2021, and he was focused on getting FAA approval for Starship to fly. Keep in mind, this is 2021, nearly 2 years prior to the FAA giving approval. The best way, he decided, was to stack the booster and the second stage onto the launch pad to show that they were ready. That will force the regulators to get off their butts, he said. There will be public pressure getting them to move to approval. It was a somewhat pointless but typical Musk move. Starship, as it turned out, would not be ready to fly until April of 2023, another 21 months away, but creating a maniacal sense of urgency would, he hoped, light a fire under everyone, including the regulators, the workers, and even himself. For the next few hours, he lumbered along the assembly lines, his hairless arms swinging, his neck slightly bent, pausing occasionally to stare at something in silence. Increasingly, his face got darker, and his pauses took on an ominous feel. By 9 p.m., a full moon had arisen out of the ocean, and it seemed to be transforming him into a man possessed. I had seen Musk get into this demon mode temperament before, so I sensed what it portended. As often happens, at least 2 or 3 times a year in a major way, a compulsion was swelling inside him to order up a surge, an all-in burst of round-the-clock activity. The goal was to shake things up and extrude the shit out of the system, as he put it. The storm clouds building in his head burst when he and a group of his top managers went down the road to the launch pad site and didn't see anybody working. This might not have seemed unusual to most people on a late Friday night, but Musk erupted. His immediate target was a tall, mild-mannered civil engineer named Andy Krebs, who was in charge of building the infrastructure at Starbase. "Why is no one working?" Musk demanded. Unfortunately for Krebs, it was the first time in 3 weeks he didn't have a full night shift working on the tower and launch pad. Soft-spoken with a hint of a stutter, he was tentative in his answers, which didn't help. "What is the problem?" Musk demanded. "I want to see activity." That's when he ordered the surge. Starship's booster and second stage, he said, should be rolled out of the manufacturing bays and stacked onto the launch pad within 10 days. He wanted 500 workers from around SpaceX, Cape Canaveral, Los Angeles, Seattle, to be flown immediately to Boca Chica and thrown into the breach. This is not a volunteer organization, he said. We are not selling Girl Scout cookies. Get them here now. When he called Gwynne Shotwell, who was in bed in Los Angeles, to figure out what workers and supervisors could come to Boca Chica, she protested that the engineers at the Cape still had Falcon 9 launches to prepare for. Musk ordered them delayed. The surge was his priority. Shortly after 1 a.m., Musk sent out an email titled Starship Surge to all SpaceX employees. Anyone who is not working on other obviously critical path projects at SpaceX should shift immediately to work on the first Starship orbit, he wrote. Please fly, drive, or get here by any means possible. At Cape Canaveral, Kiko Donichev, who won his spurs when Musk ignited a similar frenzy after seeing almost no one working at Pad 39A one night, began rousing his best workers to fly to Texas. Musk's assistant, and I'm going to mispronounce this, Yen Alahadia, tried to get hotel rooms in nearby Brownsville, but most were booked for a border control convention, so she scrambled to get arrangements for workers to sleep on air mattresses. Sam Patel worked through the night figuring out the reporting and supervising structures they would all put in place, and also how to get enough food to Boca Chica to feed everyone. By the time Musk got back from the launch pad to the Starbase main building, the video monitor by the front door had been reprogrammed. It read ship plus rocket stacked T-minus 196 hours, 44 minutes, 23 seconds, and was counting down the seconds. Balahadia explained that Musk does not let them round off into days or even hours. Every second counted. We need to get to Mars before I die, he said. There is no forcing function for getting us to Mars other than us, and sometimes that means me. The surge was successful. In just over 10 days, the booster and spacecraft of Starship were stacked on the launch pad. It was also a bit pointless. The rocket was not yet capable of flying, and stacking it did not force the FAA to rush its approval. But the ginned-up crisis pushed the team to remain hardcore, and it provided Musk with a bit of the drama that his headspace craves. I feel renewed faith in the future of humanity, he said that evening. Now, Isaacson makes a couple of key omissions here. Number one, he doesn't point out that all of the customers who were waiting for those important Falcon 9 launches had to wait even longer for no reason whatsoever. Starship was not ready to fly, it wasn't going to fly whether they stacked it or not, and the FAA approval wasn't going to be coming whether they stacked it or not. SpaceX's customers waited for no reason whatsoever, but it gets even worse than that. Approximately a year later, in October of 2022, during a similar surge to try to get Starship stacked again, near disaster struck. There was a sudden pressure shift in Starship's tanks caused by a gas vent that almost led to the ship crumpling on itself. Had it done so, it would have collapsed on more than a dozen workers gathered around the pad. It's very fortunate indeed, just a pure stroke of luck, that Musk's rushed way of doing things didn't result in the deaths of quite a number of his employees in 2022. But you ain't seen nothing yet, because a few weeks after the surge, Musk turned his attention to the Raptor. Raptor had serious problems at the time. It was too complex to be mass manufactured. According to the biography, it looked like a spaghetti bush. So in August of 2021, Musk fired the person in charge of its design and personally took on the title of Vice President for Propulsion. His goal was to get the cost of each engine to around $200,000, a tenth of what it cost at the time. Gwynne Shotwell and the SpaceX CFO Brett Johnson arranged a small meeting one afternoon with the person in the finance department in charge of overseeing Raptor costs. In walked a studious-looking young financial analyst named Lucas Hughes, whose slightly preppy appearance was mitigated by his hair being scrunched into a ponytail. He had never directly interacted with Musk and wasn't even sure that Musk knew his name, so he was nervous. Musk began. I want to be super clear. You are not the friend of the engineers, you are the judge. If you're popular among the engineers, this is bad. If you don't step on toes, I will fire you. Is that clear? Hughes stuttered a bit as he assented. Ever since he flew back from Russia and calculated the costs of building his own rockets, Musk had deployed what he called the idiot index. That was the ratio of the total cost of a component to the cost of its raw materials. Something with a high idiot index, say a component that cost $1,000 when the aluminum that composed it only cost $100, was likely to have a design that was too complex or a manufacturing process that was too inefficient. As Musk put it, if the ratio is high, you're an idiot. What are the best parts in Raptor as judged by the idiot index? Musk asked. I am not sure, Hughes responded. I will find out. This was not good. Musk's face hardened and Shotwell shot me a worried glance. You better be sure in the future you know these things off the top of your head, Musk said. If you ever come into a meeting and do not know what are the idiot parts, then your resignation will be accepted immediately. He spoke in a monotone and showed no emotion. How can you not know what the best and worst parts are? I know the cost chart down to the smallest part, Hughes said quietly. I just don't know the cost of the raw material of those parts. What are the worst 5 parts? Musk demanded. Hughes looked down at his computer to see if he could calculate an answer. No! Don't look at your screen, Musk said. Just name one. You should know the problematic parts. There's the half-nozzle jacket, Hughes offered tentatively. I think it cost $13,000. It's made of a single sheet of steel, Musk said, now quizzing him. How much does that material cost? I think a few $1,000s, replied Hughes. Musk knew the answer. No, it's just steel. It's about $200. You have very badly failed. If you don't improve, your resignation will be accepted. This meeting is over. Done. When Hughes came into the conference room the next day for a follow-up presentation, Musk showed no sign that he remembered reaming him out. For what it's worth, by the end of the meeting, they had a roadmap to get the cost of each engine down from $2 million to $200,000 in 12 months. And after these meetings, I pulled Shotwell aside and asked for his assessment on how Musk had treated Hughes. She cares about the human dimension that Musk ignores. She lowered her voice. I heard that Lucas lost his first child about 7 weeks ago, she said. He and his wife had a baby with birth problems who was never able to leave the hospital. That is why she felt Hughes had been flustered and less prepared than usual. Given that Musk had a similar experience when his first baby died, sending him into months of grief, I suggested to Shotwell that he should be able to relate. I still need to tell Elon, she said. The long and the short of it is, the price of the engine may have gotten down to $200,000, but Mr. Hughes, he left the company in May of 2022, and he had something to say to Mr. Isaacson before he made his departure. Quote, you definitely realize that you're a tool being used to achieve this larger objective, and that's great, but sometimes tools get worn down, and Musk feels he can just replace that tool. Unquote. And this is a common experience across the board. I have interviewed countless talented people who work at other companies now in a variety of different positions who used to work at SpaceX, and they all shared the same experience with me. They simply couldn't handle the corporate culture there, and they had to go someplace else. If they had families, that made their decision a lot easier. So what does this come to in the end? What is my conclusion? Well, people are complicated. That's part of what it is to be a person. It's entirely possible that Elon is simultaneously an insufferable person to work for, but also capable of extraordinary accomplishments. Those two things are not mutually exclusive. We should not be judging him by a single measure. Talking about him in singular terms of good or bad is reductionist and strips him of the humanity that his critics are wanting him to show. He's also in the spotlight right now, and the ability to get a clear understanding of the man probably isn't even possible. But here's what I recommend. Don't work at SpaceX unless you really, really want to. Otherwise, it simply isn't going to be worth it. But I have one last point to make. Even though Elon has accomplished a great deal by just using people up, as seems to be his process thus far, what might happen if he could inspire the same type of loyalty in everybody that he inspires from people like Gwynne Shotwell? What would have happened, for example, if he had addressed Mr. Hughes the next day after he took his criticism to heart and said, "Look, obviously you learned something from what I said yesterday. I value you as an employee and I hope you stay on for a while," instead of just ignoring the whole situation. He might have actually kept the guy, something I've learned in the times that I've been in management in the corporate world. However, I've also been an employee and I've been on the receiving end of harsh and blistering criticism. And let me tell you something, there's nothing that drives an employee away more than the thought that you aren't being treated with any kind of respect or any sort of acknowledgement for the work that you're doing for that company. And that's something Mr. Musk might do well to learn as time goes on, although I have a feeling he's probably never going to. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, please subscribe. It's extremely important to the success of my channel. And as always, stay angry about space.